incendiary measure for not only protesters, but for just average people who want to protect citizens. I think this is a seminal and extraordinarily important moment in American civil rights history. We've all acknowledged that this has been done, the National Guard deployed not only against the wishes, but without the request of the sitting governor. The last time that the National Guard was deployed to the state in military fashion without the request of the governor was in 1965 when LBJ sent the National Guard to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to forcibly integrate Vivian Malone into the University of Alabama. The last time this extraordinary measure was used was to enforce civil rights. President Trump is using it to trample upon civil rights. And it is a stark juxtaposition, and we should never forget the scope of history and where this fits precisely in it.
Julian, our colleague Jacob Soboroff spoke exclusively with the border czar Tom Homan about what he says are necessary arrests of protesters. Take a listen.
Anybody has a right to protest. They got the First Amendment rights. But when you impede a federal law enforcement officer, that's a crime. When you put hands on them, of course, that's a crime. When you prevent them from doing their job, that's a crime. So, you know, I've said since January 20th, you can protest all you want. When you cross that line, we're going to be seeking prosecution.
Okay, let's remind our viewers that this administration pardoned more than 1,500 people convicted in the January 6th attack who were trying to impede the peaceful transfer of power, including many who attacked police officers. Is it credible when this administration says the focus of moves like this we're seeing in Southern California is to protect law enforcement?
No, it's not. I mean, they've shown, this administration and Donald Trump especially has shown that they really don't care about protecting law enforcement. He showed that by pardoning all those January 6th rioters who violated many laws and, of course, beat up and hurt law enforcement. On top of that, Alex, they have no credibility in general with regard to these enforcement actions. Video after video has shown that these agents are the ones provoking protesters and also making up, aggression by these protesters that later video shows people were not aggressive. They've done that over and over. They've lost all credibility.
Can I ask you, Don and Susan, to react to the same question relative to, comparing to what we've seen from this administration regarding January 6th and the pardoning of 1,500 protesters there? Don, you first, then Susan.
No, there's no credibility here. And I think that the administration is just hoping that they're not called out. That's why it's extraordinarily important that we remind folks that there actually was an insurrection, and this was not that. This is a direct response to Stephen Miller's heinous deportation order of 3,000 people per day. There are not 3,000 violent criminals to be grabbed every day. What you're going to have to do is go into and grab normal, everyday folks who are working hard to contribute to this country. And there's no logical parallel between what we're seeing ICE do here versus what we saw on January 6th. None whatsoever.
Final word to you, Susan.
And it's no surprise that Donald Trump wants ICE to be more aggressive in doing that. There was a junior in high school in New York City arrested for checking in, which he is legally required to do. And at the courthouse, he was arrested and sent to Pennsylvania. Those are the stories that start getting out there that will have a backlash against Trump because he always takes it a step too far.
David, what's happening where you are right now, and how are the local lawmakers reacting to the troops we see right behind you?
Yeah, Alex, so I am right outside the federal building in downtown LA, which is just across the street from the Metropolitan Detention Center. This is where this group of about, at this point, the number of troops has grown since I last spoke to you. About 24 National Guard troops with their vehicles have been stationed here all morning. There actually are traces of tear gas in the air. I'm not entirely sure where it's coming from. I don't know if it's residue from the last couple of days, but a number of people here have been kind of coughing and getting affected by it. In the last hour also, Alex, the tension has definitely gone up pretty significantly. There are more protesters here. A number of them are sort of walking right up to the National Guard troops. The troops have, on a couple of occasions now, tried to get people to move back out onto the street. I'm told that there is a march moving here from Boyle Heights, from Mariachi Plaza specifically, which is a sort of iconic, it's an icon of the immigrant community here in Los Angeles. As to your question about lawmakers, Alex, actually just a few minutes before we went to air, spoke with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who represents a district in South LA where a lot of the activity has been over the last couple of days. She told me that she, just in the last hour, tried to gain access to the Metropolitan Detention Center, but was turned away by people who work there who did not identify themselves to her. So this is the second time in 2 days, Alex, that sitting members of U.S. Congress have been turned away from this detention center, which they have a legal right to visit for oversight purposes. Now, I asked her about her feeling about everything that's happening, the fact that the troops are here. Take a listen to a little bit of what she told me.
I think now I'm going to go out into the community to see if ICE is doing what it did last night. Okay. They issued tear gas out in these communities. I'm worried about what they possibly can do or what will happen. So I'm going to be around. I may try to come back. I'm going to try and call more elected officials to come out here because of these guards with these guns. I'm really frightened about the guns. I think one of these young kids might get excited, might get frightened, and might use those guns. Yeah. Why would they bring guns here?
Alex, I did get a statement back from the Department of Homeland Security from Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin about why congressmen were turned away from this detention center yesterday. She told me that at the time the lawmakers tried to enter the federal building, more than 1,000 rioters had surrounded the building. And due to the rioting, the lawmakers were turned away in the interest of their safety and the safety of our law enforcement. Of course, that was yesterday when Representative Waters tried to enter the detention facility today. There was no, I mean, you know, this was the protest that you could see. It was actually not really particularly close to the detention center. I'll have to reach back out to them for comment about that turning away of an additional member of Congress in this instance. And as I mentioned to you last time, this also is happening as attorneys are also telling me that they've been turned away from this and other ICE detention centers where the people who have been arrested are being held. Alex, we're going to be here all day. Just based on how much the tensions have risen in the last hour since I spoke to you, I think that likely they are going to continue to rise during the course of the day as more and more people gather here in downtown LA to protest the presence not only of ICE and other federal agencies conducting immigration enforcement, but now also in a historical event that hasn't happened in many decades, the presence also of National Guard troops who are here without the authorization of the governor of California, Alex.
Well, listen, David, if they're coming in from Boyle Heights there, which is east of where you are by just about 3 miles if you were going to go on the 101 freeway, they will be there soon. It is not far. Certainly they're not going to be going along the freeway, but they will be making their way soon to you. Keep a very close watch. Let us know if we need to come back to you. Thank you so much, David. Joining me now is Maryland Congressman and former federal prosecutor Glenn Ivey. He is a member of the Appropriations and Ethics Committees. Congressman, welcome back to the show. So before we get to Abrego Garcia, I do want to get your reaction to President Trump ordering as many as 2,000 California National Guard troops to L.A. to assist with the immigration enforcement amid those protests that are going on there. Governor Gavin Newsom said that the order is purposefully inflammatory. What's your reaction?
Well, I think as your prior panel was saying, I mean, it's an extreme overreaction. I just want to note one thing quickly. Before I was elected to Congress, I was in private practice, and I represented people who were arrested during the 2017 inauguration protests, and one who was, prosecuted during the Lafayette Square protests. All of those people, almost across the board, were either acquitted or the charges were dropped. So I think it's just this is the third time it looks like where he's going to try and overstep the law. Hopefully we won't have to wait until it gets to a jury to clear it up. But that's par for the course for him.
Something you're obviously very familiar with. Okay. You went to El Salvador a couple of weeks ago to try to check up on Abrego Garcia while he was in prison there. You were stonewalled in your attempts to meet with him. What is your response to the administration's decision to bring him back to the U.S. after months of defying court orders to facilitate his return?
Well, ultimately, I guess the rule of law prevailed, but they certainly had to be forced into a corner before that happened. I mean, I used to prosecute MS-13, and the way you went about it was you didn't deport him first and then try and indict him later. You indicted him if you had the evidence, moved forward with the case, got the conviction, got the sentence, had them serve out the sentence in jail, and then you deported him. I think what happened here was they deported him first, realized they'd made a mistake, as they admitted up front, and then tried to find ways to clean it up. And that's what this indictment in large part's about. I think we'll see how it stands up when it finally gets to court. But at the end of the day, they know they went about this the wrong way, and the American people need to know that too. And the other big point is Senator Booker was just stating, there's still hundreds of people who've been deported along these lines who haven't gotten their due process. And there are other judges, whether it's the Supreme Court or some of the lower circuit judges, who've said, bring them back, give them their day in court. Doing this to Kilmar doesn't fix all of those. They have to make sure they comply with the law in every case where this has taken place and every time there's a court order.
When you say cleaning it up on behalf of the administration, is it because they bought time to find charges? Because we know he is facing federal criminal charges for human trafficking. The Justice Department accuses him of being an MS-13 member who transported thousands of undocumented immigrants into the U.S. for profit. His attorney has called these charges baseless and preposterous. But what do you make of the charges and the amount of resources the DOJ has put into investigating him?
Yeah, great question. I mean, if you remember back to Attorney General's press conference, when they asked her, when did you start this investigation? She avoided answering that question. And I think it's pretty clear that it didn't start happening until probably after the Supreme Court said, you need to facilitate his return. And it was clear that the courts weren't just going to, let this slide. So they found this as an out. I honestly believe that's what happened. We'll see how it plays out. But there's another matter here. In the Eastern District of New York, you've got actual MS-13 leaders who are being prosecuted. Some of them are being sent back to El Salvador without being prosecuted. They were facing criminal charges. I think it's a RICO case up there. So you got, Kilmar, who was deported first, and then the charges were brought. But then you've got people in New York, it looks like, who were indicted, but then they're going to send him back to El Salvador without prosecuting him. It's hard to really...
Protesting works. Raising a stink works. Being loud and having principle works. And today you're seeing it because the people are with the protesters. And we've seen it. Kamala Harris has come out. Gavin Newsom has come out. Moderate Democrats that, guys, don't always defend actions of civil liberty, because a lot of them love the big corporations, and the big corporations often like when working class people are docile, not fighting for their rights. But even they're on the side of justice here. And you have a good example is that, yes, it was the Supreme Court, but it was regular folks all over the country who made a big bunch of noise about Kilmar. And then remember what Trump and his White House said. They said he'll never be back. And then they admitted that they made a mistake, but said that it doesn't matter because he'll never be back. And so what happened? Yes, there was a Supreme Court ruling, but folks like you protested, wrote to their Congress people, made a big stink about it, talked about it on social media, and made it something that Trump couldn't ignore. It was a combination. Yes, without the Supreme Court ruling, who knows what would have happened? But if it was just a Supreme Court ruling and everyone shut up after that, I think he's still in El Salvador. So Trump will surrender with regard to protests. And here's the thing. Even if he shuts this one down, he's lost. Because what these protesters have done is they've exposed Trumpism more than it's been since January 6th. And guys, if we're being honest, even before that. That's how big of a win it is for the protesters, shining light.